Hello there and welcome back to some more Forza Top Gear laps. Today we're taking a look at the massive fall and the slight upkick of muscle cars. It's time for retro muscle cars. We begin with the 1977 Holden Torana A9X, 216 horsepower, 295 foot-pound torque, 2,520 pounds of weight. This is the lightest car here today. The Holden Torana is an interesting one. I actually do quite like the Torana. It's one of my more favourite Holdens in the game because it kind of looks like an Escort, I guess. It's a very sort of interesting design. It doesn't look particularly muscle car-esque, but it does have a V8 motor. In fact, this is, I believe, one of the cars that was embroiled in a bit of a controversy surrounding the Australian supercars. Sort of how fast they could go. The government was worried about people being killed in them. So on and so forth. So the Torana, I believe, had to be winded down a little bit, ending up with 216 horsepower in the end, which isn't a lot, but then again, you got to remember this car doesn't weigh a lot, which is advantageous. As far as it goes to drive, it's alright. It's surprisingly soft on the suspension. You can sort of see it bucking and weaving as it goes around the track. Yeah, this thing's very soft, which I wasn't necessarily expecting. I thought the Australian muscle cars would be a little bit more composed than their US equivalent, but no. Yeah, this car has a very soft suspension. It's fun, don't get me wrong, I had quite a bit of fun driving it, but as a practical car to race in, you know, with the power and the weight, you could probably do a decent thing with this, provided you upgrade it, but stock, it isn't the best. Speaking of not the best, in fact, but speaking of almost the worst, it's the 1978 Ford Mustang II. This particular model is the King Cobra, which has a mighty 139 horsepower, 250 foot-pound torque, and 2,669 pounds of weight. This is the least powerful car here today, as well as being the least torquey, and it is maybe my least favourite. I don't like the Mustang II. This is really when muscle cars took a sharp decline. For those of you who don't know, the Mustang II is supposed to be more of an economy car. It's based on a Ford Pinto. Now, why this thing ever had to go through the awful thing of having a Mustang badge glued on it instead of it being reserved for later on when Ford could actually build a decent performance car, no idea why. Probably sales, which isn't a good thing. I mean, it doesn't explode like the Pinto does, to my knowledge anyway. It might do. You sort of hope it explodes more than a Pinto would, because I actually quite like the Pinto because I'm a bit weird. Anyways, the 2 King Cobra, it's awful as expected really. It's very slow, not a quick car. It doesn't weigh much, but it's still not a quick car. It makes a lot of noise. It's not very nice to drive. The differential likes to spin one wheel, as you can probably see through some of the lower speed corners. It doesn't look particularly good. It's just, it's hopeless. It is completely hopeless. It can beat a GT350R, as I found out in Forza Motorsport 6, if you're willing to put some upgrades in it. But if you want a piece of advice, I'd put upgrades into almost anything else that isn't a Mustang 2. You don't want to be seen racing around in a Mustang 2, or perhaps our next vehicle either. This is the 1979 Chevrolet Camaro Z28, which has a mighty 175 horsepower, 270 foot-pound torque, and weighs 3,560 pounds. Unlike the King Cobra, this is not a light car. This is a very heavy car with a very mediocre engine as well. 175 horsepower. This was the most powerful Camaro at the time. I believe sort of Camaros, the lower end Camaros, I believe they were available with 4 cylinders. They might have gone as low as 75 horsepower if I remember, 75, 90 horsepower, something like that. Yeah, neither the Mustang nor the Camaro were on a particularly good trend around the 70s. I mean, the Camaro's better, I guess. It is more powerful. It's technically more muscle car than the King Cobra was, but even still. But I'll tell you one thing this has over the King Cobra. This thing's actually pretty good. I was not expecting it to be this good to drive. It's, yeah, it's actually surprisingly composed. It handles quite a lot like a 77 Firebird would, which I don't think that's, what's the word I'm looking for, that's surprising. I'd prefer to drive the Firebird over this. I think the Firebird's a little bit more composed, but despite this being slow, which it is hopelessly slow, it's actually a good car. There's no real weight issues, which is one thing I was sort of dreading for this car because it is the second heaviest car here today, but no, there was no real weight issues at all when it came to the Camaro, which was a pleasant surprise, to say the least. Finally, we can get back on track with some more good old Australian muscle. This is the 1985 HDT Commodore Group A. 263 horsepower, 308 foot-pound torque, 2,954 pounds of weight. Finally, we can get back to some stuff that at least has a decent amount of power. The HDT VK Commodore. This might be my favourite of the Holdens in this game. I love the HSV GTSR, don't get me wrong, I think that's a fantastic car as well. But I sort of go back and forth as to which one's my favourite. I just really like the way this car looks. I really like the body kit, the baby blue paint. I think it looks awesome. I really do like this car quite a lot. And in some of the V8 supercar paint jobs you can get as well, this thing looks incredible. I've decided to leave it in the blue for this one. But yeah, you can really make the Commodore look even better than it does. I think, yeah, genuinely I do think it's a great looking car. Very 80s, very awesome. As far as it goes to drive, unfortunately, not quite as good as it looks. It's a very strange car to drive. I was actually expecting this to be one of the better handling cars here today, but no. This thing suffers from a very strange issue which I don't think I've encountered much before. The front end is extremely heavy on this car. The front end sort of wants to drag itself around. You can sort of see it understeering through the corners. Yeah, it's not like understeer in your normal sense. Usually it feels like it's the car's fault. It's actually the engine, it feels like, is sort of pitching and sending all the weight to the front and making it not able to turn. Very strange sensation. I do recommend you drive that to get your own opinion on it. Next up, 1987 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am GTA. 210 horsepower, 315 foot-pound torque, 3,483 pounds of weight. Back in America and back with a Pontiac, the Firebird Trans Am GTA, which was the highest level of the Firebird in 87. I believe there was a better Firebird available later on. It might have been the turbo one, perhaps. But yeah, this particular one is the GTA model, which came with a 210 horsepower V8 engine. Yeah, we still hadn't quite recovered from the 70s here, but we were slowly getting better. It was slowly getting back on track. Sort of the cat-killing performance and all the rest of it was slowly starting to dissipate, but yeah, still not quite. As far as this thing goes to drive, it's a big lazy cruiser, this car, really is. It's very heavy, for one. You can feel the weight in this, which is strange because you thought the Camaro that we had earlier, which is actually heavier than this, you'd feel the weight more in that, but no, you feel it more in this. It doesn't like to be pushed, the Firebird. It doesn't like to extend its limits. It just wants to cruise, and that's fine. You know, there's a perfect market for lazy cruisers. I like driving lazy cruisers sometimes around Dubai or something like that, but as far as driving it around a racetrack, no. Spend that money on a kit conversion instead and just cruise it around, I guess. But if you do want to take your Firebird on the track, then may I present to you the 1990 Chevrolet Camaro IROC-Z. 245 horsepower, 345 foot-pound torque, 3,627 pounds of weight. This is the heaviest car here today. Of course, the Firebird and the Camaro do indeed share platforms. The IROC-Z is the highest trim level of this particular generation of Camaro. Can't quite remember off the top of my head what gen this is. It's my favourite gen of Camaro either way though. I, for some reason, really like this model of Camaro. I think it's a great looking car. I think part of it's down to Gran Turismo 4. There was a version of it in that game. But yeah, I just really like the way this Camaro looks. I'm not much of a Camaro person. Usually I hate these bloody things. But this one and the Catfish as well, I just really like them. I think they are cool looking cars. I'd have this over a Fox body, to be perfectly honest. As far as it goes to drive, well, there's one simple way to explain this car. It's like the Firebird, but better in every single way. It is much, much quicker than the Firebird. It gets turned in quicker, it's more responsive. It's no worse to drive, you know, the tail doesn't come out any more than it would on the Firebird or so on and so forth. You can't feel the extra weight over the Firebird. It's just a better driving Firebird. Again, use the Firebird for cruising and looking cool, but if you want to go around the track, the Camaro is, yeah, you know, obviously I'd recommend putting some upgrades in it. Don't drive this thing stock. It's not amazingly good. Don't expect it to keep up with European sports cars. But yeah, put some upgrades in it. I'm sure it'll be a pretty good car. Next up, the 1985 Ford Mustang Cobra R, 300 horsepower, 365 foot-pound torque, 3,226 pounds of weight. This is the most torquey car here today. And finally, by the 90s, the muscle cars were slowly starting to creep their way back in. 300 horsepower, finally a respectable amount of power in one of these cars, coming courtesy of the first generation of the SN95 Mustang. I prefer the later one, the Cobra R, which we have already had go around the track, the red one. That actually went round in episode 1. This is the earlier model of that. This is the 95. I do actually quite like these models of Mustangs. I think the later version of the SN95 is my favourite. Well, I wouldn't say it's my favourite Mustang of all time. Out these two, it's my favourite. It's probably my second favourite Mustang. My first is the 2007 GT500. I adore that car for some reason. But yeah, these Mustangs are pretty cool. I don't know. As far as it goes to drive, it's not bad, but it is another lazy feeling car. It doesn't particularly want to get pushed. It's not really built for this. It does feel more like a cruiser. It's very quick though. I will give it that. It is a supremely quick car. You know, after driving some of the trosh I drove earlier, yeah, this thing really did feel much quicker than them, and that's because it kind of is. And finally today we have another Firebird. It's the 2002 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am Ram Air, 325 horsepower, 350 foot-pound torque, 3,495 pounds of weight. This is the most powerful car here today. This is the final generation of the long-living Pontiac Firebird, which unfortunately would be canned just after this particular car. Yeah, this one's 2002, so I think the Firebird got canned around this time. This might have even been a final edition of this particular generation of Firebird, which is sad. I've always liked the Firebird. I think it's a great car. Yeah, this one is also pretty great. I know people don't really like the Ram Air hood. I've got to admit, it does look silly. This particular car does not look particularly good. But it's under the skin what counts, and under the skin this is actually a decent vehicle. The way I would describe it to drive is a slightly better Mustang. It still feels a little bit lazy. It's still not quite track ready, but it is quick. It certainly isn't bad. There's certainly worse choices. As far as you go in this era of muscle car, you know, your sort of late 90s, early 2000s, you can't go wrong with the Firebird. Out of all of them, they're all similar-esque. I think the Camaro is quicker. The 35th, is it 35th anniversary? I think it is. The anniversary edition Camaro is quicker than this one is, I believe. But nevertheless, this particular car is a good one, and I do recommend giving it a go. And it was also the quickest car of today, going into 126th place with a 125.744, beating out a Subaru Impreza 22B and a Rolls-Royce Dawn. Weird place for that car to be, but there you go. In 129th place we find the Cobra R from 95, beating out an Audi Quattro and the Porsche 911. It is a couple of seconds off of the later Cobra R, of course, that had much more power and aero kits and so on and so forth. So not a bad time for the 95 Mustang. Moving down the board some more, in 157th place we find the Chevrolet Camaro IROC-Z with a 128.430. Interestingly enough, not that far off a Dodge Charger, which was the quickest car from the classic muscle car episode. So that is pretty impressive. In 159th place we find the HDT Commodore Group A with a 128.463, beats out an Acura Integra, and interestingly enough a BMW M5 from a similar generation. So yeah, really quite interesting that it managed to beat out an M5. In 207th place we find the Pontiac Firebird Trans Am GTA with 131.488. Yeah, about 3 seconds off of the IROC-Z. Just go for the IROC-Z over the Firebird Trans Am unless you want to look cooler, in which case go for the Firebird. In 208th place we find the Holden Torana A9X with 131.585, beating out an Eagle Talon and a Volvo 850R and a Vauxhall Corsa. Strange. Yeah, the Torana didn't do too bad actually, considering. Moving down once again, in 224th place we find the Chevrolet Camaro Z28 from 79 with a 134.212, goes in between a Jeep CJ5 Renegade and it beats out a Nissan Skyline from 1971. I'm sure the comment section is erupting right now. Yeah, interesting. And finally, to no one's surprise whatsoever, the slowest car today in 246th place is the Ford Mustang II King Cobra with a 140.105, goes in between a Volvo 1800E. It's quicker than a Fiesta XR2, I guess. I mean, the Fiesta had 80 horsepower, so that's not massively interesting, but well done King Cobra, I guess, for at least managing to beat something. Anyways, that's it for this episode. Join us next time when we're going to be taking a look at the resurgence of the muscle car as we go to the modern times for the modern muscle cars where power returned and it was glorious. Thank you all very much for watching, and until next time, farewell.